Hello, everyone. It's great to see you again in today's military commentary program. In the world of modern military doctrines, we are often drawn into dry technical specifications such as the range of ballistic missiles, the resolution of satellites, or the destructive power of smart bombs. But there is one factor that cannot be measured by machines, yet it determines the outcome of every survival war. That is, the human being. When it comes to the Middle East, there is a force that the West both fears and resents, yet has never dared to underestimate. That is Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. However, instead of viewing them as a faceless war machine, today I want you to step with me into their inner world. An Iranian warrior does not just carry a gun for a nation, he carries it for a faith and for a historical sense of survival. Who are they behind those dark glasses and olive green uniforms? To understand the nature of a fighter in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, we must observe and study them from multiple perspectives, not simply through a Western media lens that has labeled them as a terrorist organization. And if it were truly that simple, then it would only lead to endless killing, blood repaid by blood. Swept into that spiral of violence, we would forget the reality that beyond being members of a powerful armed force in the Middle East, they are also human beings with families, wives, and children like anyone else on Earth. In this program, we will try to understand these individuals, the fighters of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, those at the center of an intense confrontation with the world's #1 military superpower. Who are they? What drives a man to spend years living underground, guarding cruise missile launch sites like NU or Abu Madi, ready to confront a superpower? To understand an Iranian warrior today, we must understand the term PA, meaning protector. They are not merely professional soldiers. They are the core of a vast political and religious entity. Ethnically, although Iran is a multi-ethnic power, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has an extremely sophisticated selection mechanism. Group 34 holds key positions in strategic planning and external command operations. Meanwhile, the ADI ethnic group is also deeply integrated, forming a unified bloc based on a strong 34 Shia identity. This unity serves as a weapon against any external attempts to divide them. In terms of religion, this is the most critical barrier. A fighter must be a devout Shia Muslim. They do not fight purely for national interests in the Western sense. They fight for the guardianship of the jurist and for a destiny imbued with sacred meaning. For them, every hour on duty at missile complexes or on islands like Qam or Abu Musa is a religious ritual. The strength of this warrior lies in a culture of martyrdom. When a person believes that death on the battlefield is a gateway to eternal glory, they become an extremely dangerous opponent. They do not need to defeat the United States in a conventional battle. They only need to make the cost unbearable for their enemy. Imagine a young man born into a devout family in Isfahan or Mashhad. From childhood, he is raised on stories of Western betrayal and the spirit of self-reliance. To him, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is not just a workplace. It is a community of destiny. Their logic originates from the concept of sacred defense. During the 8-year Iran-Iraq War, when the world turned its back on Iran, the first fighters ran into minefields carrying only plastic keys around their necks, what they believed to be keys to heaven. The psychology of these fighters in the 1980s was shaped by a culture of martyrdom. For them, death on the battlefield was not a failure, but the highest spiritual achievement. Iranian war literature of that era, memoirs like Children of War or Those Two or Three People, depicts young soldiers aged 15 to 17 captured by Saddam Hussein's forces, yet maintaining an astonishingly steadfast faith. This resilience did not come only from military discipline, but from deep communal bonds that turned prisons into character-forging crucibles. This explains why the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps can endure massive casualties without collapsing. Russian researchers describe this as a combination of iron discipline and religious faith. The key difference lies in the martyrdom mindset. In conventional military science, a soldier's death is a loss of manpower. But in the IRGC's logic, death becomes a strategic tool. When a fighter no longer fears death, all calculations about the enemy's superiority in weapons become meaningless. This is why, even when surrounded by US-led coalition forces, they maintain an almost eerie calm. They are not preparing to win a battle. They are preparing to sacrifice for a long-term ideal. If we only view this through a simplistic Western lens of us versus them, good versus evil, we might mistakenly assume that Iranian fighters are ignorant, blindly driven by faith. In reality, the opposite is true. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps today is one of the most intellectually advanced groups in the country. The fusion of religious devotion and technical thinking has created a force capable of confronting the U.S.-Israel alliance for decades. At their most elite training center, Imam Hossein University, cadets do not just learn how to shoot or lay mines. They spend thousands of hours studying philosophy, politics, history, imperial interventions, and most importantly, asymmetric military technology. A modern PA fighter could be a master's graduate in aerospace engineering. Why is this important? Because under total sanctions, the human mind becomes the most powerful weapon. They cannot buy fifth-generation fighter jets, so they turn their intelligence into drone algorithms, cheap but highly effective. This intellectualization of faith creates a formidable combat logic. They know how to exploit the enemy's weaknesses. If the U.S. prides itself on dense satellite networks, Iranian fighters study how to jam signals and attack data nodes. They do not try to build a military like the U.S. They build a system designed to neutralize U.S. power through inexpensive and pragmatic methods. This logic extends into psychological warfare. They understand that Western societies are highly sensitive to casualties. Therefore, these fighters are not just gunmen, but psychological experts who create scenarios that force the enemy to hesitate before the first shot is fired. Let's look at reality. A father and husband in the military, no matter how strong his faith, still has to provide for his family. In Iran, the IRGC has solved this with a unique model, the soldier entrepreneur. This is the material foundation that allows them to withstand the harshest economic sanctions in history. Outside the military base, an IRGC officer might manage a hydroelectric dam project, a telecommunications network, or even supermarket chains. They control up to 1/3 of Iran's economy through charities and construction conglomerates. This creates a sustainable cycle. The economy supports the military, and the military protects economic privileges. For a PA fighter, joining this force means their family will have housing, high-quality healthcare, and access to top education. And in a country where inflation can reach 40–50%, this security is more valuable than any political promise. But do not mistake this for ordinary corruption. In their view, controlling the economy is part of total war. If the West uses economic pressure to suffocate Iran, the IRGC uses the economy to build a comprehensive system combining politics, military, economy, and society to resist. This gives the fighter absolute loyalty, because if the regime collapses, not only their ideals disappear, but their family's prosperity vanishes as well. This tight bond between personal fate and national destiny creates a force resilient against both internal and external threats. If the IRGC is the shield, then its external force is the spear. These fighters are true ghosts across the Middle East. They are not just soldiers, they are shadow diplomats, masters of psychological warfare, and network builders. Consider the life of an Iranian expeditionary fighter. A QOD fighter might spend 10 years in Lebanon or Yemen without anyone knowing his true identity. They learn Arabic fluently, understand local cultures and tribal dynamics, and know how to leverage local nationalism against the U.S. Take General Qasem Soleimani as an example. Before his assassination, he was a living symbol for all PA fighters, a simple man who often appeared on the front lines, eating and sleeping alongside soldiers. This is Iran's soft power. Unlike U.S. troops who often live in isolated bases, Iranian fighters integrate into local communities, building schools, clinics, and organizing local forces. This approach is rooted in a deep logic, strategic depth. An Iranian fighter understands that if he can stop the enemy in places like Bus or BA, his family in Tehran will be safe. Their war is a distant survival war. They accept lives of isolation, exile, and being labeled as terrorists. Yet in their hearts, they see themselves as knights defending their faith against global oppression. Ladies and gentlemen, from what we have analyzed, it is clear that IRGC fighters are an extremely complex entity. They are not soulless puppets. They possess the sharp calculation of entrepreneurs, the endurance of intellectuals, and the daring of believers. However, we must not ignore the darker aspects. When the military becomes a dominant economic force, corruption and generational gaps are inevitable. Young Iranians born after 2000 who are protesting in Tehran's streets, do they see these fighters as heroes or merely as protectors of a system that is suffocating their future? The strength of an army lies not only in missiles but in the support of its people. The IRGC's real survival battle may not be against U.S. aircraft carriers, but for the hearts of its own youth. What do you think about this portrait of the Iranian fighter? Can this model of the devout soldier entrepreneur help Iran endure in the coming decades? Share your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear your perspectives. Thank you for accompanying Military Commentary in this long and in-depth episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the sharpest military analyses.